Okay, so I'm probably going to get some pretty bad backlash from this, maybe, I don't know. But I don't like Outlast games. And there's very specific reasons for them being on my kind of least favourite horror game list. And don't get me wrong, the game itself, the story, the environment, the everything about it is good, but the way you play it just annoys me senseless. And today we're going to go over what that is and why I really don't like it. And kind of just discuss the game in general. Before we get started, again, do want to say, do not dislike the game in terms of what it is. I appreciate what it is, but the gameplay of it, just, holy moly, it's just, oh my god. Anyway, I'm going to start rambling in a minute. So if you do happen to like this video or agree with me, do let me know in the comments, and do be sure to leave a like down below. And if you're interested in more Resident Evil and horror and Souls content, be sure to subscribe, turn notifications on so you don't miss a video. We stream every weekend and upload every day, so there's always something going on. But without any further ado, let's get into why I do not really like Outlast that much. So before we get into why I don't like the game, let's get into what I do like about the game, because there is some positives in this game that I do quite like. First of all, first person horror for me is always the king. Takes the cake for me. Now that doesn't mean Resident Evil, because that is a survival horror game. This is just a straight up horror game, and we'll get into the reasons about that in a minute, while they are completely different. But in terms of a straight up horror game, where there isn't really much in terms of, you know, item management and combat and stuff like that, first person takes the cake. Mainly because the perspective restricts you on what you can see. If you were playing a game like this in third person or fixed camera, you would see things coming that you shouldn't normally be able to see because it will be behind you or to the side of you or whatever. So in a horror game like this, like Amnesia, like Five Nights at Freddy's, you know, those type of games where there's no combat involved, first person perspective will always be the best way to make these games. Story wise, from what I can remember at the very least, is very good. There's a few twists in there, which is nice. It's always nice in the horror game to get a twist of some sort. Third of all, using the camera to get night vision and see in the dark is a very good way to use a normal camcorder. I think it's quite unique and does add a depth of kind of realism to the game, because it's just a camera that just has a night vision toggle. That's all that it really is. And finding the batteries is, I guess, loosely kind of inventory management, because you have to be kind of wary on when to use the night vision, because you run out of battery, you have to replace the battery. So that's cool too. They're the positives. Now we'll get into the negatives of the game. Well, the main reason I don't like the game, and it's kind of the same with the second one. I do prefer the second one to the first one anyway, but again, I don't really like the games that much just because of a gameplay point of view, and that is the constant running away from everything. Now I get, as a Resident Evil fan, I understand that not every single character in every single video game that's a horror game is going to be a Leon Kennedy who just punches things and kicks things in the face, or a Chris Redfield that literally punches boulders out of his way. I get that not everyone's a secret special super agent that just knows how to handle themselves in every single way, and I appreciate the character in this game is literally just a journalist for the most part. Again, story. But still, do not make me run away from every single thing in the game. It's quite annoying having to just get around areas. I like the puzzle aspects of the game, and when it requires you to kind of explore. But as soon as the major enemies appear and you just have to run and hide all the time, it's so boring. It gets so repetitive very quickly. Something I've mentioned in the past in terms of, you know, talking about Resident Evil videos, quite recent ones actually, is this trend of them having a pursuer enemy in their games. And again, it's not particularly terribly done in those games. You can fight back, you can kind of slow them down, so you do have kind of that choice, but for the most part you're obviously ignoring them and running away, again, to save ammo and stuff like that in those type of games. But we've seen that done now about 4 times in recent Resident Evil releases. There is 7. There is the 2 remake, the 3 remake, and 8. 8 toned it down quite a lot. It's really not that present. But either way, it's still there. And my issue with that kind of thing in a horror game, whether it is a Resident Evil game or a game like Outlast, is it loses its effect very quickly, especially if you do it over and over again in the same game. You get the first time around, okay, and the first time around in the game, you're like, oh my god, what is chasing me? How do I get away from this thing? And it's pretty cool. But when you make every enemy in every area do the same damn thing over and over again, and you just know what to expect, it's like, okay, here comes an enemy that I can't fight back. I will hide in this locker. I will hide under this bed until it walks past, and then I will sprint to the exit. This becomes even more of just a tedious event that happens when you've played the game already. You know where you need to go. You know where they're going to come from. And then you just have to get lucky that they don't literally tickle your butt and get you before you get past them. Like, there's not a lot going on in terms of variation. You cannot do anything about it, which is just the most annoying part of it. Granted, the designs of these enemies, especially the doctor, that kind of sits in my mind about this game. When I think about Outlast, the first thing I think about is getting my fingers snipped off by some psycho doctor. They're very well done. The design of these characters is very well done. They're all quite unique. There's obviously the big guy at the beginning, there's the doctor, there's the phantom at the end, and that appears throughout the game. And there is ways that they have made it a little bit better as well, where you can close doors behind you, and, you know, vault over stuff like that. And your character hauls ass. Like, look at the background. He's like a Usain Bolt kind of character. He is out of there immediately. And again, that is a very good portion of it. But when all you're doing is sprinting away and hiding until the thing disappears, it gets very tedious. Look at a game like... The perfect example I have of a game that does this correctly when it is kind of the main focus of the game is Alien Isolation. The alien kills you if it hits you. Like, you are dead. As soon as it gets close to you, you are dead, and that is it. But yes, you can hide from it, and the best part about that is the AI kind of learns what you're doing. For example, this is something that I picked up about Isolation that's pretty interesting. If you encounter the alien multiple times, and you have a tendency to hide in a locker or anything like that, it'll more often than not check those areas for you, because it knows that's what you usually do. So it does require you to change tactics. You can't just hide in the same place every single time it sees you, because it will figure out where you are eventually. You have to think about what you're going to do, or it's going to figure out exactly what your plan is and just kill you anyway. It also gives you ways to kind of briefly get rid of them. For example, the flamethrower in Alien Isolation, you can use it against the alien. Does it kill it? No, not at all. But does it give you a window? Can you run away? Can you scare it off? Yes, you can. That's the same thing with the synthetics in that game. They will kind of fuck you up if they find you, but you can take them out. You can kill them. You can render them useless. The alien can even find them and fight them too. Like, there's so much going on, and I know Alien Isolation came out a lot later on than Outlast, so the technology and the things you could do was a little bit more advanced, but there was a big trend of this type of game at the time of Outlast came out. You know, you look back to old horror channels on YouTube, you know, for example, to this day I still watch PewDiePie, and when he first started out, it was Amnesia and Outlast and Slenderman and stuff like that. They were all roughly the same type of game, and these type of games do still exist and do still happen to be made all the time, and sometimes they're quite unique, and sometimes they're kind of just blatant kind of copies of something that's already been done. But that again is the same with any game, really. Like, everything's a copy of everything nowadays. It's very rare is there something completely unique released. But either way, again, I'm not going to completely say I dislike the game entirely, I just don't like how the game plays. Again, the second one, although it's much of the same thing, I do kind of prefer the second one in terms of the tone and how the game kind of develops over time. But they just don't really interest me that much. And when I have played them, I just really didn't enjoy it after the first hour or two, because it's a lot of the same thing. But yeah, that's just my take on the series in general. I'm sure from the look of the new one, the Outlast Trials, it seems to be a multiplayer version of the games. Could be something to check out. Obviously that would definitely change up how the game plays. From what I've heard in terms of recent rumours, that it's more of like a Dead by Daylight type game, where it's like a asymmetrical multiplayer game, which would be pretty interesting. I'll definitely check that out. And like I said, I don't hate the games in terms of story and overall tone and stuff like that. I do really enjoy it. but the gameplay is just the issue for me. But plenty of people out there like it, so I'm not going to bash anyone who likes the game, because at the end of the day, if you enjoy that type of gameplay, then you enjoy that type of gameplay. That's totally fine. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you like the games, if you think the gameplay is good, if you think the gameplay is bad, if you don't like the game at all. Any comments are allowed, even if you don't agree with me personally. I'd still love to see it. Thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you all tomorrow for another video.